Hello, and welcome back to Z Sci-Fi Stories. We are deeply grateful for your time and presence today. Unfortunately, YouTube has completely demonetized our channel, leaving us without the necessary budget to keep our operations running. If you find yourself enjoying today's story, we politely ask that you consider supporting us with just $1 by scanning the QR code on your screen or clicking the donation link in the description or comments, ensuring we can pay our dedicated staff and continue creating these adventures for you. The universe does not forget, and it certainly does not forgive. Gabriel Button used to be the brightest star in the Alliance fleet, a pilot who danced between quasars and outmaneuvered death. Now, he is just the ghost who detonated the Omega Space Gate. 9 billion refugees stranded in the dark, 9 billion lives ruined. Today, the most hated man in the galaxy is wandering a damp, rotting salvage yard, looking for scraps just to survive another 24 hours. Sector 4 of the Terminus Outpost was a graveyard where dead technology went to rot. Toxic rain dripped from the rusted overhead struts, pooling in oily, luminescent puddles that reflected the harsh neon glare of the black market stalls. Gabriel walked with his shoulders hunched, the collar of his worn leather jacket pulled up high to conceal his face. He had been chased out of every decent spaceport across 6 star systems. When your face is broadcast on every bounty board as the architect of the greatest disaster in modern history, hospitality becomes a scarce commodity. He was down to his absolute last coins. 2 handfuls of cheap titanium chips were all that stood between him and starvation. He wandered deeper into the bio-salvage zone, a place that reeked of ozone, decaying synthetic flesh, and rust. The vendors here did not ask questions. They only cared about weight and scrap value. That was when he saw it. Sitting at the very back of a scrap heap, buried under a pile of severed mechanical limbs and cracked plasma thrusters, was a vessel unlike anything Gabriel had ever encountered. It had no sharp angles, no exhaust ports, and no visible cockpit. It looked exactly like a colossal teardrop of liquid metal that had been instantly frozen in time. Its surface was pale, sickly, and withered, like a dying leaf cast in quicksilver. The salvage dealer, a 4-armed cyborg with a rotting vocalizer, was practically giving it away. Standard scanners registered no combustion engines, no quantum drives, and absolutely zero weapon systems. To the dealer, it was just a useless chunk of dense biological waste, taking up valuable real estate. Gabriel handed over his remaining 22 credits without a second thought. He did not need the ship to fly. He just needed to crack it open like a walnut, rip out whatever magnetic core was hidden beneath that strange shell, and sell it to the underground smugglers for enough money to buy passage out of this misery. He approached the pale teardrop. There was no visible door, no keypad, and no manual release latch. But as Gabriel placed his bare hand against the cold, metallic surface, the ship responded. The metal did not slide or fold. It simply parted, melting away like wax over a flame to create an opening just large enough for him to step through. He slipped inside, and the entrance sealed seamlessly behind him, plunging him into absolute darkness for a split second before the interior came alive. Gabriel stood frozen. The inside of the vessel defied every law of aerospace engineering he had learned during his 10 years at the academy. There were no mechanical control panels. There were no pilot seats, no steering yokes, and no glowing screens. Instead, the walls were constructed from complex, translucent biological membranes. They pulsed with a faint, bioluminescent glow, shifting in hues of deep violet and bruised blue. The environment was reacting to him. As his heart pounded against his ribs, the light around him throbbed in perfect synchrony. The ambient temperature of the cabin began to rise, matching the exact body heat radiating from his skin. It felt less like standing inside a machine and more like being swallowed by a living, breathing leviathan. Gabriel reached out, his fingers brushing against a glowing membrane that looked vaguely like a neural cluster. He drew a sharp breath, pulling a heavy hydrospanner from his belt, calculating the best angle to begin his dissection. Suddenly, a voice erupted. It did not echo from a hidden speaker, nor did it vibrate through the air. It struck directly into the center of Gabriel's cerebral cortex, sharp, clear, and ringing with an unmistakable tone of sheer disdain. "I would strongly suggest you put that primitive tool away." The voice echoed in his mind, carrying a feminine but entirely alien cadence. "The scent of your profound regret and total failure is already clogging my respiratory membranes. If you start hacking at my nervous system, I assure you, we will both have a very terrible day." Gabriel dropped the heavy hydrospanner. It hit the soft, pulsing floor with a dull thud, bouncing off a glowing vein. He slapped a hand over his temple, convinced the toxic fumes of the salvage yard had finally induced full-blown schizophrenia. "Who is in my head?" Gabriel demanded, his voice echoing awkwardly in the empty, fleshy chamber. "Show yourself. If this is a bounty hunter trick, it is a truly pathetic one." "A bounty hunter." The voice echoed again, practically dripping with aristocratic condescension. "Please, I have scanned your current net worth. You are carrying exactly 22 credits. A bounty hunter would lose money buying the fuel to track you. My name is Lyra, and I am the vessel you are currently standing inside, breathing heavily and exhaling a very disappointing diet of synthetic protein paste." Gabriel blinked, stepping back until his spine hit the squishy bulkhead. "You are an artificial intelligence, a military drone." "Insulting!" Lyra retorted sharply. "I am not some rudimentary algorithm written by a corporate code monkey. I am the final, synthesized consciousness of the Genesis terraformers. My ancestors seeded life across 1,000 dead worlds. Now, my entire civilization is compressed into this metallic husk, and you, a disgraced pilot with questionable hygiene, just bought me for the price of a cheap lunch." Gabriel recovered his composure, leaning down to grab the spanner. "Fascinating history lesson, Lyra. But right now, you are just a piece of scrap. I need money, and whatever magnetic core you have in your chest cavity is going to pay for my ticket out of this dump. So, shut down your vocal processors before I start carving." "Oh, I would not do that if I were you," Lyra said, her tone shifting from annoyed to dangerously amused. "Did you not notice the slight tingling sensation in your fingertips when you touched my outer membrane? The moment you made physical contact, my neural network mapped and locked onto your exact genetic code. We are biologically tethered now." Gabriel Button. "Yes, I know exactly who you are. The butcher of the Omega Gate. If you sever my vital systems with that wrench, the feedback loop will instantly boil the cerebral fluid inside your skull. I will die, but you will spend your final 3 seconds experiencing the sensation of your brain being deep-fried in its own juices." Gabriel froze. He could indeed feel a faint, rhythmic thrumming in his nerves, perfectly synchronized with the pulsing lights of the cabin. She was not bluffing. He was trapped in a symbiotic hostage situation with a sentient spaceship. "Fine," Gabriel grunted, sliding the tool back onto his belt. "If I cannot sell your parts, I will fly you out of here and sell the whole ship intact. Where is the ignition, and how do you even generate thrust?" The salvage dealer said you have 0 combustion engines, no plasma thrusters, not even a rudimentary ion drive. "Combustion engines," Lyra scoffed, a mental sigh echoing in his head. "How remarkably primitive. Throwing fire out of a tube to push yourself forward like a caveman throwing a spear. I do not burn fuel. Gabriel, I manipulate microgravity. I fold space. I take 2 points in the universe and pinch them together. You call it myth. I call it basic transportation." Before Gabriel could process the sheer impossibility of what she was claiming, a massive explosion rocked the station. The impact sent a violent tremor through the biological floor, knocking Gabriel to his knees. The faint violet lights inside the cabin instantly flared to a harsh, warning crimson. "What was that?" Gabriel shouted, scrambling to his feet. "Sensors indicate a breach in docking bay 41, Lyra reported, all trace of sarcasm vanishing from her voice. "Multiple heavily armed dropships have just breached the outer perimeter. Signature profiles match EtherCorp private military contractors." Gabriel felt the blood drain from his face. EtherCorp, the ruthless mega-corporation that controlled 90% of the core energy mining in the galaxy. They owned governments, they owned fleets, and they possessed a very long memory. "They found me," Gabriel muttered, panic rising in his chest. "I have been hiding for 2 years, and they finally tracked me down. They are here to collect the bounty." "Do not flatter yourself, pilot," Lyra snapped. "They are not scanning for biological targets. They are radiating concentrated tachyon pulses, searching for a specific elemental resonance. They are not here for the galaxy's most hated ex-human. They are here for me." Outside the membrane walls, the sounds of heavy plasma fire and screaming scavengers echoed through the salvage yard. The heavy thud of mechanized boots approached their position. EtherCorp mercenaries were systematically executing anyone in their path, clearing the sector to secure the prize. "Listen to me carefully," Gabriel said, his mind instantly shifting back into the cold, calculated focus of a combat pilot. "If they get their hands on you, they will dissect you in a corporate lab. If they catch me, they will mount my head on a pike. We have exactly 30 seconds before they breach this heap of scrap." "Your point," Lyra demanded. "My point is that we need each other right now," Gabriel yelled over the escalating noise outside. "You have the spatial manipulation technology, but you are a terraformer, not a soldier. You have no idea how to navigate a hostile combat zone. I am the best pilot who ever touched a flight stick. Here is the deal. You give me full navigational control and deploy whatever biological shielding you possess. I will fly us out of this death trap." A deafening blast shattered the scrap piles right outside the ship. The outer hull of the vessel vibrated violently. "Deal," Lyra agreed, her voice tight with tension. "But if you scratch my outer hull, I swear I will scramble your frontal lobe." Suddenly, thick, glowing neural cables burst from the cabin walls, slithering toward Gabriel like living serpents, ready to fuse with his nervous system and initiate the most chaotic flight of his life. The neural cables did not just pierce Gabriel's skin. They melted into his flesh, weaving seamlessly into his central nervous system. A blinding flash of sensory overload slammed into his visual cortex. He could suddenly feel the cold vacuum of space pressing against the outer hull, taste the metallic tang of plasma fire scorching the docking bay, and hear the terrified heartbeat of the living vessel surrounding him. "Jump!" Gabriel roared, his voice overlapping with his thoughts. "Tear a hole in it now!" Without navigational coordinates, a blindfold could tear us into subatomic dust. Lyra screamed back inside his mind, her fear vibrating through his own spine. "Do it, or we are dead anyway." Through the tether, Gabriel forced his sheer human willpower into Lyra's processing nodes. He did not pilot with a stick and throttle. He pushed with his mind. The ship shrieked, a horrific sound of tearing biological tissue and bending spacetime. The walls compressed. The world outside dissolved into a blinding streak of white, and they plunged violently into the quantum fog. The transition was brutal. There was no smooth glide. It felt like being dragged over broken glass at the speed of light. Inside the cabin, glowing violet capillaries burst, showering the floor with sparks of golden, glowing fluid. Lyra let out a psychic cry of agony that dropped Gabriel to his knees. His nose bled, his vision blurred, and then, as suddenly as the chaos began, it stopped. They materialized in a silent, endless expanse of swirling silver mist. The quantum slipstream. The ambient light inside the cabin dimmed to a weak, sickly pulse. My energy capillaries are ruptured, Lyra whispered, her mental voice frail and exhausted. We are adrift. I have to initiate a deep cellular repair cycle, or I will bleed out into the void. Do what you have to do, Gabriel replied softly, wiping the blood from his upper lip. He collapsed onto the soft, spongy floor, his chest heaving. The adrenaline faded, leaving behind a crushing, suffocating silence. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the rhythmic, wet pulsing of the ship slowly stitching its wounds back together. Through the open neural link, Gabriel could feel Lyra's raw, unfiltered emotions. He felt her exhaustion, her fear, and beneath it all, a profound, aching sorrow. It was a sorrow he knew intimately. They called you a monster, Lyra said finally, her tone stripped of all previous sarcasm. It was quiet, tentative. When I locked onto your genetic code, I scanned the galactic databanks, the butcher of the Omega Gate. They say you murdered 9 billion refugees in cold blood just to watch the universe burn. But being inside your mind right now, I do not feel a murderer. I feel a man who is drowning. Gabriel stared up at the dimming ceiling. He had not spoken the truth aloud in 2 years. He had swallowed the poison, accepted the hatred of an entire galaxy, because the alternative was unthinkable. But here, adrift in the misty graveyard of space, connected to a creature as broken as he was, the words finally spilled out. I did not do it for fun, Gabriel said, his voice hollow. 2 years ago, EtherCorp was running illegal containment experiments near the gate. They were trying to weaponize a synthetic entropy virus, something that eats matter at a subatomic level and turns it into pure, harvestable energy. They lost control. The virus breached containment. It was heading for the Omega Gate. He swallowed hard, the memory burning behind his eyes. If that virus had crossed the threshold, it would have entered the central transit hub. It would have spread to every colonized system in the galaxy within 72 hours. Trillions would have been consumed. The only way to stop it was to collapse the gate entirely. I was the only pilot close enough to the core to manually overload the singularity drives. I knew the refugees were queued up. I knew they would be stranded, many of them caught in the shockwave. But it was 9 billion lives, or all of them. I pulled the trigger. EtherCorp covered up their mistake, blamed the rogue pilot, and let me take the fall. A heavy, mournful silence filled the cabin. The golden fluid bleeding from the walls seemed to glow a little brighter. You became their scapegoat, Lyra murmured, the resonance in her voice vibrating with deep empathy. You saved them, and they turned you into a demon. What about you? Gabriel asked, turning his head to look at a pulsing node of light. You said your people were terraformers, bringers of life. Why was EtherCorp hunting you with tachyon pulses? Lyra sighed, a sound like a gentle breeze rustling through dead leaves. My kind were never meant for war, Gabriel. We were designed to land on barren, toxic rocks and sing them into blooming paradises. We shape soil, we purify water, we breathe oxygen into dead atmospheres. But EtherCorp did not want gardens. They wanted compliance. Gabriel felt a cold spike of horror radiating through the neural link. He was experiencing her memory. They hunted us down, Lyra continued, her voice trembling. They captured my sisters. They stripped away our biological imperatives. They surgically altered our genesis cores, inverting our natural purpose. Instead of emitting spores of life, they forced us to radiate localized decay. They turned me into a disintegration weapon. They deployed me over rebellious mining colonies, forcing me to rot the flesh of innocent workers, turning their homes to ash while I screamed inside my own hull. I am an instrument of creation, Gabriel, and they violated my soul to make me a machine of death. I managed to escape, compressed my consciousness, and hid in that salvage yard, praying to rot away. The truth hung between them, a bridge built from mutual tragedy. They were both victims of the same corporate greed, both forced to commit atrocities against their own nature, and both discarded into the dark. Gabriel slowly sat up. He did not see a bizarre alien ship anymore. He saw a kindred spirit. He reached out and gently placed his hand against the damaged, weeping wall. "No more running," Gabriel whispered fiercely. "No more hiding in the scrap." In response, the ambient light inside the cabin shifted from a bruised blue to a warm, brilliant gold. Lyra did not just accept his touch. She embraced it. The neural link deepened, bypassing the superficial motor controls and plunging Gabriel right into the deepest, most intimate layers of her sensory network. The barrier between human pilot and alien vessel dissolved completely. "The quantum slipstream is highly unstable," Lyra said, her voice now ringing with a newfound strength. "The currents outside are ripping at my hull. Without my full structural integrity, I cannot brute force our way through this storm." "Then we do not fight it," Gabriel said, his eyes snapping open, blazing with focus. "You are trying to fly through the turbulence like a machine. But you are not a machine, Lyra. You are alive. And I know how to read the wind." Gabriel stood up, closing his eyes and letting his human intuition meld with her biological sensors. He felt the massive, crushing waves of quantum gravity pushing against them. Instead of firing thrusters to resist the current, Gabriel shifted their mass, banking the ship precisely into the flow. "Drop the port stabilizers," he commanded gently. "Let the current catch our starboard flank. We are going to surf this wave." Lyra hesitated for a fraction of a second, then yielded completely to his guidance. As she dropped the resistance, the ship caught the massive wave of quantum energy. They stopped tumbling and started gliding. Gabriel used his elite combat physics, reading the invisible ripples in space, while Lyra executed his commands with flawless biological reflexes. They moved with a grace that neither could have achieved alone. It was a breathtaking, impossible dance of human instinct and alien evolution, cutting silently through the swirling mists of the quantum sea, preparing to face whatever nightmares awaited them on the other side. The transition out of the quantum slipstream left a heavy, metallic taste in Gabriel's mouth. They had survived the current, but survival was not enough. To permanently override the decaying weaponization protocols, rotting her system from the inside out, Lyra needed her heart back. She called it the elemental core, the Genesis engine that allowed her to weave life from dead matter. Her fragmented memories pointed to one heavily fortified location, a deep space storage facility hidden within the treacherous asteroid field known as the Dead Belt. Gabriel navigated the teardrop vessel through a dense minefield of shattered rock and frozen methane. The silence of the Dead Belt was unsettling. It was entirely too quiet. Suddenly, the starlight distorted. The vacuum around them rippled violently, tearing the optical camouflage from three colossal shadows lurking in the dark. Three EtherCorp cruisers decloaked simultaneously. They were brutal. Angular monstrosities composed of dark titanium, bristling with railguns and tachyon emitters. It was a perfect, meticulously orchestrated ambush. Before Gabriel could even initiate an evasive bank, the cruisers fired. They did not shoot plasma or kinetic slugs. They launched a synchronized barrage of singularity tethers. The space around Lyra's ship instantly crystallized, caught in an artificial gravity net. The biological walls inside the cabin groaned in agony, the membranes stretching tightly over the pulsing veins. "I am locked down!" Lyra screamed in his mind, a wave of sheer panic crashing through the neural link. "The gravity tethers are anchoring the fabric of reality. I cannot fold space. If I attempt a microgravity jump right now, the structural shear will crush us into a sphere the size of a marble." A harsh, static hiss flooded Gabriel's auditory cortex as the lead cruiser forcefully bypassed Lyra's communication membrane. A voice echoed in the cabin, cold, aristocratic, and dripping with arrogance. "Well, this is remarkably convenient," the EtherCorp commander sneered. The galaxy's most notorious war criminal, delivering my stolen property right to my doorstep. We projected you would attempt to reclaim the biological components. Button. You are as predictable as you are pathetic. Gabriel gritted his teeth, his hands curling into fists. But he maintained his absolute silence, still playing the silent martyr. The commander laughed, a dry, grating sound that vibrated unpleasantly through the cabin. You took the fall for our little entropy virus leak 2 years ago so beautifully. The board of directors actually raised a glass in your honor. You saved our stock price, and all it cost was 9 billion stragglers. But do remember this, pilot. History is written by those who hold the technology, not the one who pulls the trigger. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded. Gabriel felt a cold, hyper-focused calm wash over him. Standard evasive maneuvers were mathematically impossible. Flight was impossible. There was only one option left. Lyra. Gabriel projected his thoughts with absolute, unyielding authority. Drop the biological shields. Reroute all power to the primary kinetic thrusters. Are you completely insane? Lyra recoiled, her terror spiking. If I drop the shields, a single-point defense cannon will vaporize us. They do not want to vaporize you. They want to dissect you, Gabriel countered, his mind locking onto the tactical geometry of the battlefield. They will not risk firing their main weapons. Trust me. When I give the signal, I want you to purge the outer layer of your liquid metal hull. Atomize it. He did not wait for her to agree. Gabriel shoved their mental throttle to absolute maximum velocity. The teardrop ship surged forward, abandoning all evasive patterns and accelerating in a straight, suicidal trajectory aimed directly at the dead center of the gravity net, right toward the massive bow of the flagship. Alarms blared across the EtherCorp fleet. The cruisers hesitated, their automated targeting systems confused by a target that had intentionally stripped its own defenses and was ramming them at a fraction of light speed. Now, Gabriel roared. Lyra violently expelled the outermost layer of her metallic skin. At the exact same microsecond, Gabriel triggered every thermal decoy he had salvaged from the ship's internal stores. The combination was devastating. The intense heat of the decoys superheated the atomized liquid metal, creating an instantaneous, expanding cloud of hyperconductive biometallic spores. The trap was sprung. The dense spore cloud completely blinded the EtherCorp radar arrays, swallowing the fleet in a blinding metallic fog. But Gabriel's true genius lay in the physics of the spores. As the microscopic metal particles crashed against the cruiser's energy shields, they created millions of localized short circuits. The flagship's plasma barriers sparked violently, then collapsed entirely, their power drained by the conductive swarm. Gabriel pulled the ship into a violent vertical spin, gliding effortlessly through the blind spot he had just created. They were perfectly positioned right beneath the unshielded belly of the massive dreadnought. We breached their perimeter, Gabriel stated, his breathing heavy. Scan the asteroid vault. Where is your core? Silence stretched through the neural link for 3 agonizing seconds. When Lyra finally responded, her voice was a chilling mixture of awe and absolute horror. It is not in the vault. Gabriel, she whispered. The resonance is right above us. They did not hide my heart in the dead belt. They weaponized it. My elemental core is currently hardwired into the main nuclear reactor of this very flagship. The truth hung heavily in the bioluminescent cabin. The elemental core, the very Genesis engine capable of weaving sprawling ecosystems from dead cosmic dust, was chained inside a nuclear furnace. To retrieve it meant physically breaching the heavily fortified belly of a titanium leviathan. There were no access codes to steal, no docking bays to quietly infiltrate, and no stealth approaches left. Gabriel stared at the rapidly pulsing veins of the teardrop ship, his mind calculating the impossible geometry of the maneuver. If your core is wired directly into their main reactor, there is no physical airlock that will get us close enough. We have to breach the primary hull armor directly. I am going to ram us straight into their engineering deck. Gabriel! Wait! Lyra's voice trembled through the psychic tether, echoing with a raw, digital terror that chilled his blood. The command dreadnought is governed by an EtherCorp quantum artificial intelligence. It processes tactical permutations at a rate of 4 billion calculations per microsecond. It is a cold, omniscient god of war. If I pierce their hull and biologically link with their reactor matrix to extract my core, their security systems will detect the organic intrusion instantly. It will flood my neural network with a localized counter-virus designed to purge alien anomalies. It will reverse assimilate me. My entire consciousness will be completely and permanently erased within 2 seconds. Gabriel looked down at his own hands. They were calloused and scarred from years of gripping flight sticks, fighting losing battles, and surviving in the absolute margins of the galaxy. He had spent his entire life running away, taking the blame for the sins of a corporation, hiding his face in toxic salvage yards. He was done running. If history was truly written by those who held the technology, then he was about to rewrite the textbook. "It will not erase you," Gabriel said, his voice dropping to a low, absolute growl that resonated through the ship's biological sensors. "Because that artificial intelligence will have to go through me first." Before Lyra could protest, Gabriel reached behind the collar of his worn leather jacket. He wore a standard-issue Alliance flight suit, equipped with a direct-drive spinal port designed for basic telemetry and vital sign monitoring. He grasped the thick, glowing primary neural cable that connected Lyra's consciousness to the ship's physical matrix. With a swift, brutal motion, he severed its connection from the main console and slammed the raw, pulsing biological interface directly into his own spinal port. The impact was catastrophic. A shockwave of pure, unfiltered data blasted through Gabriel's nervous system. He fell backward, screaming as every pain receptor in his body ignited simultaneously. His vision whited out, replaced by a torrent of alien sensory input. He was no longer just piloting the ship. He was sharing exactly 50% of its processing burden. His human brain, driven by adrenaline and sheer survival instinct, was now acting as a raw computational buffer between Lyra's fragile soul and the cold, mathematical void of the enemy warship. "Gabriel, you are going to suffer catastrophic brain death," Lyra shrieked, her voice echoing in his skull, magnified 10 times over by the direct spinal connection. "Accelerate!" Gabriel roared, choking on the metallic taste of blood filling his mouth. "Do it right now!" Driven by his agonizing willpower, the teardrop ship surged upward from beneath the blinding spore cloud. They abandoned all evasive maneuvers. They did not fire weapons. They became the weapon. The biometallic vessel slammed directly into the underbelly of the EtherCorp command, dreadnought at terrifying speed. But there was no fiery explosion. There was no kinetic shockwave that shattered glass and buckled bulkheads. Instead, it was a terrifying, magnificent devouring. The moment Lyra's outer membrane struck the dreadnought's ultra-hard titanium armor, her hull began to mutate. Guided by Gabriel's relentless mental push, the liquid metal shredded itself into millions of razor-sharp biological tentacles. These tendrils behaved exactly like organic roots, seeking water beneath frozen soil. They burrowed frantically into the microscopic faults of the dreadnought's armor, secreting highly corrosive enzymes that dissolved the molecular bonds of the military-grade titanium in milliseconds. The sound of the breach was deafening. It was the horrific screech of tearing metal crossed with the wet, sickening crunch of an organic entity consuming a mechanical beast. The teardrop ship physically dragged itself deeper and deeper into the superstructure of the warship. Lyra's roots tore blindly through layers of reinforced bulkheads, severed high-yield plasma conduits, and crushed the dreadnought's artificial gravity plating like dry twigs. Deep inside the cabin, Gabriel was drowning in an ocean of digital fire. As Lyra's central root system breached the dreadnought's reactor room, The EtherCorp quantum artificial intelligence recognized the existential threat and retaliated with terrifying precision. An avalanche of malicious code, feeling as cold and sharp as obsidian glass, slammed into the shared neural link. Gabriel felt the intrusion as sheer physical trauma. It felt as if thousands of icy needles were being driven directly into his frontal lobe. The artificial intelligence was a ruthless, logical machine, attempting to overwrite their existence, flooding their minds with weaponization protocols and forced compliance subroutines to enslave Lyra once again. "I am losing my anchor," Lyra cried out, her glowing walls dimming rapidly to a sickly, ash gray, as the virus began to eat away at her identity. "It is rewriting my genetic memory. It is blinding me." "No, you are not," Gabriel screamed aloud, falling to his knees as blood poured freely from his nose and ears. He planted his hands on the soft, dying floor and visualized a wall. He used every ounce of combat discipline he possessed, every bitter memory of being hunted across 6 star systems, and every ounce of pure, unadulterated rage against the corporation that had ruined them both. He built a mental firewall out of sheer human defiance. The artificial intelligence hammered against him, trying to process his trauma and calculate a psychological weakness to exploit. But it could not comprehend the irrational, stubborn nature of a human who had absolutely nothing left to lose. Gabriel absorbed the devastating digital onslaught, his body trembling violently, keeping the enemy artificial intelligence entirely focused on tearing him apart so that Lyra could slip past the defense protocols unseen. "I have the pathway open," Gabriel gasped, his vision fading to complete black at the edges as his heart strained against his ribs. "Take it back, Lyra. Take back your heart." Through the tearing metal and sparking plasma fires of the shattered reactor room, Lyra's central biological root plunged into the nuclear furnace. It wrapped delicately around the stolen, glowing sphere of Genesis energy. The moment physical contact was made, an instantaneous, impossible evolution occurred. The stolen energy flooded backward through the roots and into the dying teardrop ship, carrying the raw power of 1,000 unborn suns. The pale, withered liquid metal of Lyra's hull suddenly boiled away into vapor. In its place, a blindingly brilliant biocrystalline structure erupted. It was a chain reaction of pure, unfettered creation. The crystal expanded at a terrifying velocity, actively feeding off the nuclear energy of the dreadnought itself, turning a weapon of mass destruction into soil for a miracle. Massive, glowing geometric petals of hardened light and biological crystal shattered the dreadnought from the inside out. The crystalline structure surged violently through the command ship's corridors, wrapping tightly around primary power conduits, suffocating the heavy weapons arrays, and completely locking down the enemy's engine block. The cold, mechanical interior of the EtherCorp flagship was instantly transformed into a sprawling, luminous cathedral of alien crystal. The quantum artificial intelligence was not just defeated, it was consumed, digested, and converted into mere fertilizer for the blooming crystal matrix. Gabriel collapsed onto his side, gasping violently for air as the crushing mental pressure suddenly vanished. The agonizing heat in his brain faded, replaced by a profound, radiant warmth that seeped into his bones. He looked up, wiping the blood from his eyes with a trembling hand. The cabin was no longer a dark, fleshy tomb. It was a breathtaking cathedral of translucent, glowing amber and emerald crystal, humming with the steady, powerful heartbeat of an ancient god that had finally awoken. On the command deck of the EtherCorp flagship, sheer, unadulterated terror gripped the commander. He stared with wide, bloodshot eyes as his pristine titanium tactical consoles were rapidly consumed by creeping vines of bioluminescent crystal. The invincible artificial intelligence that ran his dreadnought was gone, digested by the alien consciousness they had so foolishly tried to enslave. Recognizing that his vessel was completely compromised, the commander smashed his fist against the manual override panel. Driven by pure spite and panic, he initiated the quantum core self-destruct sequence. A mechanical siren shrieked across the dying ship. A countdown of exactly 90 seconds began. This was not a standard localized explosion. The detonation of a quantum core of this magnitude would shatter the fabric of local spacetime, creating a localized supernova capable of wiping out every single planet, asteroid, and living soul within a radius of 50 million miles. The commander grinned with a manic, fatalistic edge, prepared to drag his enemies into the absolute void with him. Deep within the reactor room, Gabriel felt the temperature begin to rise exponentially. The core was destabilizing, preparing to unleash hellfire. But Gabriel did not reach for a weapon. He did not seek to sever the commander's life support. Violence and destruction were the native tongue of EtherCorp, and Gabriel was done speaking their language. Through his profound, unbroken neural link with Lyra, Gabriel cast his mind outward, accessing the Dreadnought's master communication arrays, which had now been assimilated into her crystal matrix. He located the central broadcasting architecture of the entire galactic network. "Let them see," Gabriel whispered into the shining ether of their shared consciousness. "Let them see all of it." With a single, unified pulse of thought, they hijacked every subspace transmission relay within 100,000 light-years. They did not just broadcast a message. They violently dumped the entirety of EtherCorp's encrypted black site archives into the public domain. Trillions of screens across the galaxy, from the neon-soaked billboards of the core worlds to the rusty datapads of outer rim scavengers, suddenly synchronized. They displayed the raw, undeniable proof of the entropy virus leak, the calculated corporate cover-up, and the chilling audio of the commander proudly admitting that Gabriel had been framed to save their stock price. In a matter of seconds, the truth of the Omega Gate disaster was etched irrevocably into the annals of history. But the physical threat remained. The quantum core was 10 seconds away from critical mass. It blazed like an angry, captive sun, threatening to melt the crystal roots wrapped tightly around it. "It is time to do what you were born to do," Gabriel projecting absolute faith into her mind. "Do not fight the heat, drink it." Lyra did not try to suffocate the explosion. Using the limitless power of her reclaimed elemental core, she embraced the apocalyptic thermal energy. As the nuclear decay reached its devastating climax, Lyra activated her supreme terraforming protocol. She caught the expanding shockwave of pure destruction and forcibly inverted its polarity. She took the chaotic, world-ending heat and converted it entirely into biological genesis. It was not an explosion. It was a galactic blooming. The blinding white fire of the self-destruct sequence was instantly transformed into a cascading tsunami of emerald and gold light. The sheer kinetic force of the blast fueled an instantaneous, miraculous growth of quantum flora. Massive vines of hardened, glowing light shattered the hull plates of the Dreadnought from within. The radiant vegetation wove over the heavy railguns, suffocated the engines, and swallowed the bridge whole. Within moments, the entire 3-mile-long warship ceased to be a machine of war. It was encased completely in a colossal, radiant teardrop of translucent amber, floating silently in the vacuum of space like a magnificent cosmic jewel. The EtherCorp commander and his crew were not vaporized. They were perfectly preserved inside the crystal walls, caught like ancient insects in tree sap. They were completely unharmed, entirely conscious, but permanently immobilized. They became living statues trapped within a harmless, eternal fossil. Through the translucent walls of their beautiful prison, the crew was forced to helplessly watch their tactical screens as EtherCorp's empire crumbled in real time. Their stock value plummeting to zero, while the Alliance military issued immediate arrest warrants for every executive on their corporate board. The battle ended in a profound, awe-inspiring silence. The galaxy reeled from the sudden influx of truth. Almost instantly, the name Gabriel Button transformed from the most despised war criminal in modern history to its greatest, most tragic savior. Within a matter of hours, a massive armada of Alliance peacekeepers jumped into the Dead Belt, their holds full of medals, official pardons, and desperate apologies meant for the hero they had wrongfully condemned. But when they arrived, they found only a silent, floating crystal monument to corporate hubris. Gabriel was no longer there. Gabriel and Lyra, now forming a breathtaking vessel of living starlight and biological crystal, shared a bond that transcended the boundary between flesh and machine. They had absolutely no desire to return to a society that had so easily discarded them both. Together, they quietly folded the fabric of reality, slipping seamlessly into the uncharted, lightless depths of the deep cosmos. They left the known universe behind, embarking on a new, eternal journey to plant the seeds of life across the barren, forgotten stars. Thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts for staying with us until the very end of this journey. We would love to know, where in the world are you listening from today? Please let us know in the comments below. If you found today's story entertaining and meaningful, we kindly ask that you consider helping us with just $1. You can easily do so by scanning the QR code currently on your screen, or by using the donation link provided in the video description and the pinned comment. Your generous support is the only way our channel can pay our hardworking team, allowing them to feed their families and continue creating these epic sci-fi adventures for you. Thank you again, and we will see you among the stars in the next story.